What's up, guys? It's Chris and Will coming back to you with another weekly Beluga podcast. We did miss last week, so this is going to be a bit of a jam-packed episode because there's a lot going on right now. But we're going to start off with a 5-minute summary of pretty much everything we missed in the last 2 weeks or so. Chris, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's been a ton of activity in the last 2 weeks, and you both had the end of the year stuff, so a lot of different tokens rallying and crashing and all of that, and then also just kind of leading into the start of the year. It's been a crazy start with the Bitcoin ETF coming right out, and so sort of classic end of the year, you tend to see dumps, right? Because everyone's trying to sell before the end of the year, before tax season, and so as usual, right? Degenerates don't pull the trigger until literally the very last second. So we kept running and the charts kept going up until I think December 31st, and then near the end it started to dump, and so it started to come back. And right after the clock ticked, I think it started coming back again. And so I think it just goes back to the same sentiment of like I think we're pretty up only and pretty bullish. Is my view, and I believe Will's as well. And so these dips that happen are for buying and for things that happen, right? So as people rotated out, they got right back in, and then leading up to this week, it's been choppy since then, though. I would say first week looked okay, and then coming into this weekend, I think things started to dump pretty aggressively, and it was mostly alts that were dumping. And so you could just see the rotation as the Bitcoin ETF coming up for approval on Wednesday as the deadline. So it could happen before that, but January 10th is the deadline. As that gets closer and closer, and all signs point to it is going to make it through, people rotating out of their alt positions and de-risking, and then also continue to buy into Bitcoin. And so that's broadly been the story, but it's been crazy. We've seen this. We've seen a lot of the alts go down. We've seen, some of the late stage activity happening in these cycles, which means hacks and rugs. So we'll get into all of that. And then, some strange stuff with firings and rehirings and all of that. So we'll get into all of that. But it's been a wild last 2 weeks. Will, did I miss anything?
No, I just wanted to say, I think as we probably mentioned on our podcast right before we closed out the year, this kind of chop was expected. I think right now is, at least for me, I'm not a good enough trader to be trading this on leverage. I mean, if you looked at a chart, they're literally wicking it 10% either direction on many altcoins, which that's liquidating a lot of traders. We had I think it was the single largest day of altcoin liquidations in 2 years was last week. So it's, they're hunting people's stops, grabbing the liquidity they can find.
It's been crazy.
All these dips are really buying opportunities, as Chris said. If you're trading
just
spot,
look how shallow.
If you're trading leverage, be
dangerous
careful.
This is. This would have just killed you.
Yeah.
Instantly just dumping hard, and then
I mean,
there were
some perp dexes that are in some like kind of serious bad debt trouble just off of these wicks because of obviously poor risk management on the exchange side, but just because traders also weren't prepared for a move like that, even though
crazy.
It's really not, compared to what we've seen in the past, like that's not a huge movement. So it was interesting to me to see so many people lose their positions over a move like this.
Great.
Yeah, but I guess let's just get into
right
the
back
ETF
into
stuff.
Right into it then. Yeah. So maybe as a quick primer, I'll just flash a couple screens up. I mean, we saw this report this morning from CNBC, kind of saying the quiet part aloud, and we all knew, which is the Bitcoin ETF seems all but done at this point. And publicly announced, even Gensler this morning ended up coming out with a thread on how to invest in cryptocurrencies and crypto assets, and with a couple things here, which, to Will's credit and Will's point earlier, which is actually, despite my hatred of Gensler, actually seems like a fairly reasonable set of things to say about investing in crypto. But that's
pretty much the same things I tell my friends who I get into crypto. I was happy to see the change in messaging because, I mean, we've all seen what it's been like for the last 2 years. It's just regulation by enforcement, letters show up on your door saying you did something wrong and you had no idea about it. To have him, changing it up in this way, I think is really bullish for us.
Agreed.
And I'm hopeful that we might actually get some clear regulation at some point in the near future.
Agreed.
Because that's been a huge problem for us. But yeah, I mean, Bitcoin ETF is dominating everything right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at this chart real quick. Will, like, you're just curious your commentary. What are you thinking when you look at this?
I mean, again, like I'm not a leverage trader typically. I think if I were, I'd be looking at it and kind of be shitting myself a little bit. This is some scary price movement for somebody who's just for the last couple of years. I've just been buying spot. Like I'm ecstatic. I love seeing Bitcoin price rally like this. I mean, I remember, I think when we first got our filing news at like, Pico bottom bear market last year, Bitcoin jumped like 4% or something off the back of it, and everyone was going crazy. And then we took a step back and said, wait, that wasn't a big movement. Like, what if the ETF doesn't do anything? And now we're seeing what happens when it's actually coming to fruition. Now, I don't even want to think about what would happen if we get rejected.
Oh my
Of course,
God.
very low chance of that, but it would get real scary.
This is January 1 of last year, by the way.
Yeah,
16K.
Crazy movement.
Seriously. Just insane. I mean, it's just been such a crazy fucking ride up here.
It's been just a fun nuts.
One. Yeah, it's been good, But it's just been so bullish, this price action, And like, I've gotten chopped up here, just over trading it, Overall, I'm still very good, but like up, but still, I definitely got a little too excited here and go up too much and, start taking out some here and there. But it just goes to show you, if you believe in something and you believe it's going the right direction, just buying and holding spot is the move, instead of fucking gambling it away and throwing up on some leverage and betting on this stuff. I remember I used to watch every FMOC thing and just sit here and just watch the charts like an idiot, and try and gamble on movements. And that's just so stupid when the move is very simple. If you bought around here and just held and kept adding on each dump, right, you'd be up in an incredible way right now, and you'd probably be really happy, right? You'd basically be what Will did, right? And so I started doing that around here, around this sort of like 25-ish range, and it's been working out for me ever since then, And so, I agree, this is just a crazy chart, and just the last month, it's been so volatile the last couple days, but this morning on Monday, we're just up only, and this is, we're just approaching some really good levels here.
It is interesting. Nuts. I've noticed during the bear market, obviously altcoins are always kind of tied to Bitcoin price movement, but for a while, even like shit coins were tied to Bitcoin price movement. And in the last couple weeks, especially like last few days, it seems really disjointed to me, which is encouraging to see. Yep. People are gambling on shit coins regardless of the direction Bitcoin moves in a very short right. time frame, which is a really good sign.
Stuff pans out too, right? Which is like, as Bitcoin becomes this type of thing, what happens to Bitcoin shit?
Well, stacks hit. I don't know if it's an all-time high, but they hit $2.
Yeah, crazy. Talk about. This thing has been out for so long, and they finally are. It's been a good year for stacks, though.
Yeah,
or a good 2 months. It's not bad. Yeah,
it's another trade I talked about forever and didn't take.
You and me both.
Add that to the list.
Yeah, definitely. I've been like, I was so bullish. If you just read my messages, you'd be like, God, this guy's probably got a huge stacks position. It turns out I think I'm like $500 of stacks on some central exchange. I probably lost a password to, Oh, God,
brutal.
But anyway, this is good stuff, though. What do you think is going to happen, Will? How do you think about this going into the approval? Right, we've got a couple more days. Wednesday is the deadline here, which means it could come earlier. But I'm
always nervous. I'm always nervous when all of crypto Twitter agrees on something, and the approval going through is one of those things.
Agreed.
I'm not going to say the meme this time is different, but this time feels very different. These are real professional processes that have been in play for a long time, and it's like kind of finally coming to fruition. I tend to think we're going to see a pretty nasty candle to the downside between when we're recording this Monday night and Wednesday, the expected approval.
Right.
They're just going to try to hunt people because it's a better entry for them. And, we're still in a relatively illiquid market at this stage of the crypto industry. We don't have the liquidity that we did in the bull market. So it's a lot easier to do. I tend to think we're going to see some pretty vicious movements heading into Wednesday. Do I think that really matters at all? Like, no. As long as you're not trading this shit on leverage, like, don't worry about it. I would say look for big Bitcoin nukes to accumulate some kind of tangentially related Bitcoin beta altcoins, because those are all going to rip even more. Like we talked about BRCs, but ordinals have been the big thing recently. I used to trade a bunch of NFTs, and most of my friends who are still big traders are into Bitcoin NFTs now. So that's an interesting play to me. Not something I've done yet because honestly, like even as a big crypto guy, it seems like way too complicated, and
I don't
want to worry about.
And like, there's somebody like it took me forever to.
Like, I don't want to worry about keeping it's literally inscribed on a Satoshi, and like if you accidentally mingle it with your other normal Bitcoin, it's gone. Like you've basically just lost it. So that's it's still, as with many things in crypto, to be fair, but it's still very off of what I'd call production value, I guess. I mean, these things are trading, some of these tokens are, $1 billion market cap now, and the tech literally like doesn't work. It kind of reminds me of like Lightning Network stuff back in the day, which is again becoming a topic because everyone's excited about Bitcoin. But yeah, I mean, I'm basically just I'm doing the same thing I've been doing for the last year. The only thing I've changed is that I'm buying more shit coins and meme coins on different chains. Because I feel like there's going to be a big trickle down effect of this, even if the native coins nuke right when the approval happens, which could happen as people try to swap in and FOMO to Bitcoin. That will likely happen actually, but yeah, I think those are all just kind of buying opportunities. Now, if it gets rejected, like, we're in for a really rough ride. We won't even speculate that for now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at this point, that's too painful to think about. I'm assuming we're going to make it through, and it's mostly a question what to do. But I think, like you said, I think we're all very much still underappreciating how big of a deal this is ultimately going to be. Now, it's not going to be the minute we approve, it starts to rip up only forever. It'll take some time because not only do these things get approved, they have to go live, they got to do some marketing, people have to understand and buy it. It'll take a while, right? But the amount of inflows that are going to come in because of this is enormous. Bitcoin, at the end of the day, forget all tokens. Bitcoin on its own is a Lindy asset at this point. People know that they should have exposure to Bitcoin. Right. And it's one of those things where, especially right now, it's a risky asset and like a risk on asset, but that you should have some percent of your net worth because it would just be stupid not to. Right. And at this point, that's just a really, really positive thing for that, like the story and how that it's boring. It's just, digital gold. It's an easy story. And the asset managers are looking for new products to sell their clients, So like we're just going to get an enormous amount of inflows in here. And I think it's just going to be an absolutely ridiculous pop. Right. And it may not, again, it's not going to be 1 day or 2 days, but it will just be an accumulation of many things that over time that just lead this thing to some kind of stability and a big movement up. So I think just like you said, well, people underappreciate and also over speculate on what's going to happen. If you just zoom out and like don't mid curve it, just remember, just be the left curve here, which is like institutional money, big is good, and that leads to number going up. Just buy on dips, make sure you hold a bag of spot. Feel free to gamble. A little bit here and there with some leverage or whatever, if you want to trade, like perps or whatever on this. But like at the end of the day, one of the most straightforward moves, if you like want to have crypto exposure, is buy Bitcoin spot when there are red days and just wait it out over the next 2 years and see where you are after, and then you can make a decision. And I guarantee you're going to be happy about it. There's just no question. The only thing you'll be annoyed about is you didn't do more of it. right? And so it's just the easiest move on the planet. But it is funny to watch people just completely fumbling this moment, you know.
Yeah, I guess kind of on the topic of how this might affect altcoins, let's take a look at Solana and Bonk, because that's been kind of the child of this last 2 or so
Yep.
3 month
Oh, totally.
run up.
But before we get to that, actually, real quick on BitBoy, just completely unrelated, but a hilarious thing you sent me earlier. So, Will, you want to talk about it real quick? Who is this guy for people who might not know?
Yeah, so this is Ben Armstrong, formerly known as, I guess he was also BitBoy Crypto, but he used to run a content platform called BitBoy Crypto, which, I mean, I can't think of any other org that has been memed and just utterly shit on before. He's basically famous for being absolutely ridiculous, shilling shit coins, dumping on followers, doing questionable things morally and physically. And this is the guy who is currently camped out at the SEC office with a sign saying, "I'm not leaving until the ETF." He took it upon himself this morning at like 6 a.m. or something. He literally tweeted at 6 a.m. that he hopes Warren Buffett dies. And then the next tweet was, "I'm going to the SEC to get this thing pushed through."
Oh, God.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Like, this is why people make fun of our industry, you know? But it's so
Oh,
funny.
man.
It's so
This
funny.
guy is just so hilarious, you know? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Oh God. Okay. Anyway, BitBoy is just hilarious. We could do a whole talk on him and his like BitBoy's
Yeah,
greatest moments,
literally.
because especially the last year he's had a hell of a time, you know. But
Jesus Christ.
anyway, not to let it get us too distracted, you know, like you said, pivoting back to altcoins. This is one of your tweets, by the way. And I remember when you mentioned this on Friday, you're like, Chris, I bought my first alt token in a while. And then at that point, I remember thinking, okay, the top absolutely is in. And literally as that moment happened, we've been on just an absolute tear the other way. You know? So let's pull it up real quick. I want to hear your thoughts on this whole thing.
Yeah, so when did I think I tweeted that. I had swapped right at about $100.
This is what, Friday the 5th?
Yeah. Yeah, Friday.
All right, this is the 5th right here, you know. So
Yeah.
right at the peak of this, we've just been down
I knew
only
it.
since then.
To be fair, like, I knew what I was getting myself into. Yeah, no, that it hurts a little bit. I definitely capitulated. First Solana token I've had in my wallet since Rollbit first deployed on Solana years ago. I mean, like the token I bought is up at least, but it does hurt a little bit for Solana to start crashing like this. I don't know. There's a lot of fighting on Twitter. I'm an ETH guy, so I mostly see the ETH side of it for sure. But I've been saying for a while that it's hard for me to see Solana performing like people are saying it will, given, I mean, just very simple facts. Like, there are literally 16% more Solana tokens in the market than there were a year ago today. That's a lot. And to think that it can just easily shoot up to the same prices it was during the bull is like kind of preposterous to me. What I will say is Solana has almost single-handedly brought the shitcoin market back. ETH shitcoins are still struggling, but on a lot of different chains, like, that was mostly Solana and Bonk's doing. I think that effect is going to last. I think Solana is probably going to have a bit of a tough road for the next couple months. Just because they've been outperforming everything else. It's like we said on the last podcast. I think I said exactly that Solana has now outperformed everything heading into the end of the year, and it's going to be tough for it to do something like that again. It's likely that it'll underperform other stuff for at least the first half of this year.
I agree.
But I don't think that buying
up.
Solana ecosystem tokens is necessarily a bad idea. I think the price of the native asset might range, but I think buying ecosystem is fine because it's still, I mean, wildly underdeveloped for the price it's at.
Agreed. Like the price at this point is the price of Sol itself is assuming a lot goes right for the whole ecosystem.
Yes.
Which it's still not quite there, right? And so just like you said, I think is Sol probably at a local high? Like it definitely feels like it, right? And this sort of like insane move up usually has this insane move back. It's just like how it works. And so it's not to say this isn't going back. It's not to say Sol's dead. It's not to say any of those things. Just to say that, like, relative to other things, especially when there's great narratives around other assets right now, and other assets happen at the time, Solana may be due for a bit of a pullback, which we're already seeing, right? The 130 was insane, and we kind of pulled back, and we've kind of really been down only for a bit. And relative to other assets, you see Solana has been underperforming, right? ETH has been holding about the same range. Bitcoin is still doing quite well because they have a lot of momentum and narrative going for it, where Solana doesn't have that right now. Again, which doesn't mean it's a bad asset. I still hold a bunch of Solana, but I'm not adding to my bags at this point, and
I tend to think that we've got this Bitcoin ETF narrative that's been the thing for a while now, almost a year probably. And I think, as we've talked about, that it's probably that ETF narrative probably shifts to ETH next, because it's kind of the obvious next guess. So
yep.
I wouldn't be surprised to see ETH like hugely outperform Solana in the next couple months. And
I agree.
Like, realistically, we talked about this earlier today, but Solana's pretty far off from being anywhere large enough to have like a real ETF issued for it. It's simply too volatile and too small. It's what, a $40 billion market cap or something. Yep. Like, look, it's big for crypto, but in the grand scheme of ETFs, it's not. They've got some real growth to do before they're kind of qualified. So I think the next natural choice is ETH. And yeah, I expect us to kind of flip back on that sentiment pretty heavily.
Totally, especially as LT season really comes into play too, and becomes stronger, right? Like, again, I'm still bullish Solana for what it's worth. I still think it's worth holding. I don't really look at Solana alts anymore, is the honest answer. I kind of think it's cooked for now. It's been there and it's come, and it's been great, and it's been a lot of fun, but and we're getting back to more serious business and get back to other things. And so it's great. I still think it's going to perform well over the next 2 years as the entire crypto markets go up. But
should we pull up the Antonio Brown tweet as a kind of
perfect, exactly, a great example of like a late stage crypto stuff in Solana, right? Antonio Brown, I mean, maybe Will feel free to walk us through it.
Yeah, so Antonio Brown, it is the same NFL player that we all know, who I remember him tweeting a ton of scams way back in the day during the bull run. But this Ponzi scheme on Sol, Mango Farm, paid him something to shill their product on Twitter. And he actually did it. It's now been deleted because it rugged, of course. Like, I think literally less than 24 hours after he tweeted that. But right when I saw it, I sent it to my friends, and I was like, this is the most top signal thing I've ever seen. I mean, that's just such late stage crypto cycle type stuff.
Exactly. And I think it's one of the first, like, I don't know if it's the first. I haven't really been paying enough attention to Solana for that long, but it's probably one of the more notable scams of this cycle.
Oh yeah. I mean, this dude literally, he shilled his ref link. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's kind of hilarious. I mean, look, just to be super honest and transparent, I had a bag of mango, and I was one of the early depositors here. And I remember thinking, wow, this is like revolutionary technology. I'm minting 60% of my mangoes. I'm minting 60% of my deposit every 24 hours and just ripping. And then the actual sequence of events was, it had come out like, the rules were fairly simple. You would deposit some Solana, and it would convert into mangoes, and then you would just somehow get more mangoes.
The magic black box of mangoes.
Exactly. And the sort of number was every 24 hours you would get about 60% of your mangoes, right? And so, you think of it as getting 60% returns on a daily basis, and they had this incredible bar that would just go up constantly. The number keeps going up, so it's very enticing to watch. And the rule was you had to wait 1 week to withdraw, and if you withdrew any time before 1 week, you would get 35% tax on it. So it really incentivized you to hold your assets on there for a full week. And so we came to that point. It was coming up on a week, I believe, and they said, "Hey, we need to do a migration and migrate from contract 1 to contract 2. You have 30 minutes to do it. Otherwise, you're going to fill out some form." I remember I was on Saturday. I had a long Friday night, so I was taking a nap in the middle of the day. I woke up to go do it, and I walked over, and it had and then everything was down. And then my Telegram was blowing. I was saying, like, don't interact with the front end; it's compromised. And I was like, oh god, So, that's what happens in crypto. Sometimes if you're not careful and you're stupid about it, but it is kind of hilarious, but it's very like late stage cycle stuff, like at the end of the day, people can sense the fear coming, people can sense the pullbacks coming, and it's very much the scammers are here and the money grabs are out. So, if anything, the combination of Will buying a soul shitter plus Antonio Brown rugging us is just like that. If that's not perfect information, then I don't know what it is.
That's
God.
the best indicator out there.
Yep, exactly. But maybe another thing, like, it's not totally late stage stuff, but maybe just speaking about and more crazy things in crypto. I mean, one of the events that happened over the last few weeks was around Friendtech and Racer, and maybe for our listeners who don't know what Friendtech is, it's a social application that got a lot of buzz over the last few months. It came out, I think, in the summer of this year, give or take. Is that right, Will?
Like August or something.
Yeah, exactly. So sometime summer of this year, it came out, and it's basically like this idea of you can buy shares of your friends on Twitter, in a similar view of Twitter. So you can buy them and then get access to chat that way, to chats with them that way, and talk to them. And it became a whole thing. People, it was a whole mania. People were buying and selling shares of each other, keys, and getting really excited. It was a whole thing on SocialFi. And Racer, who's the founder, got a lot of love and got, well known on Twitter and all that. And Will, I mean, maybe take it from there. Like, what's transpired over the few. It feels like the sentiment against Friendtech has not been great anyway. And then out of the blue, this whole thing happens. But maybe tell us what's going on.
So Friendtech primarily got popular not because it was a great app to use, not because it was fun, not because they had good tech. It was because Paradigm, which is a big crypto VC, invested in them, and they're known for big airdrops. And we knew that Friendtech was doing an airdrop. So I was one of the many people that farmed it pretty early. I mean, I didn't go super hard or anything, but I was definitely using it. And even for a guy who makes a good amount of his money from farming meaningless applications and airdrops, it was difficult for me to use. Usage stuff aside, there were 10% taxes either way you traded a key, which means like
ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Not to mention the spread that was on the bonding curve as well. But long story short, everybody was farming it. Then other shiny new tokens, other shiny new airdrop farming opportunities came around, and all of that mercenary capital pretty much up and left. I don't know where Friendtech TVL is sitting. I think it's 25 mil now, if I remember correctly. Its all-time high was 50 mil, and ETH price has gone up since that time. So relative percentage-wise, I think it's dropped off quite a bit. Okay, we're at 35. But if you look at volume and actual usage stats, things are like pretty dead there right now. A lot of this TVL is people holding keys of their friends just to accumulate points over time. But interestingly, the guy who I would say was kind of their community manager of sorts, who kind of knew everybody in crypto Twitter, onboarded people through the social side of things, and just generally very well-liked guy, was not technically a founder maybe, but kind of a founding member, was getting founder level equity, etc. He was fired apparently right before his equity vested too, which was a big part of the controversy. So now Racer, who's kind of the main founder, has deleted his Twitter. This was a couple weeks ago, for who knows what reason. But Racer's now gone. They fired their community-facing guy, like who did all of the social side of things. And then Monad, who's kind of become crypto Twitter's new layer one baby that hasn't launched yet, instantly hired the guy, and they capitalized on the opportunity. And I mean, if it was even possible for my Twitter feed to be filled with more Monad stuff, it is. I think this was a really cool move by them. It shows that their marketing department is on top of it. I know that he's friends with those guys because I know some of the Monad guys, but even still, like I was impressed by that. I think this is kind of like everybody will forget about Friendtech stuff if they have a good airdrop. I don't think anything else really matters. So do I think this is like a death sentence for Friendtech? No, but I think they're almost carrying it out by themselves, because interest is really at an all-time low over there.
Yes.
I don't know what their expected timeline on stuff is, but TikTok.
It's just hard to understand what's going on there, right? Because great concept and fun concept. They really captured a lot of momentum. And like you said, it was one of those things where all of a sudden everybody was doing it. And
overnight.
And it was fun. I had a great time farming tokens and trading people and all of that, and then making a bunch of money on it. But we just saw some strange behavior from Racer and team over time, right? And more than that, the application didn't really improve all that much. It changed here and there, but you saw full-fledged clones from some random people in China that spun up on Arbitrum or Avalanche or whatever that were way more fully featured, that came out much faster. And of course, it didn't have the same feel as being the first and on like an Ethereum based chain.
And they didn't have Paradigm.
Yes, exactly. It didn't have the cachet, and it wasn't as good, but still they were able to like really capitalize. So like not only did they have the attention, they could have capitalized on it in many ways to both, hire a great team and really ship great product, to utilize that to really convert those farmers into long-term users, or to drop the token or whatever it is. And it seems like they've just let all of it slide. And I think it's going to be very hard to turn that ship around at this point, especially with all the negative sentiment for Racer right now. So look, the truth is they printed a bunch of cash, right? Because 10% fees is ridiculous. And so they ended up making a bunch of money on it. But they had an opportunity to do something really big, or at least potentially do something big and new and interesting. And now it seems like, the moment is past, and, it's going to be a tough hole to dig themselves out of. It's really just it seems like to me like an unforced error, and just one of those things that's like painful to see. If you have a moment and you blow it for no reason, it's almost worse than never even having the moment, so.
Yeah,
we'll see. I think people are still bullish SocialFi, and I'm open to it. I wouldn't say I'm as bullish as everybody else is, but like I'm open to it. I think it's cool. It's I think it doesn't. I've yet to see something that like really makes sense longer term, but it is fun, and I get it, and I like that there's people doing things here. So I hope there's something interesting that comes out of it. But it may be one of those like maybe the MySpace to the Facebook of upcoming SocialFi, where had a moment, had some good usage in a little crowd, and then didn't go anywhere.
I mean, I think they were the feature. I mean, airdrop, VC fundraising, etc. aside, the thing I was excited about for Friendtech was the idea of like exclusive access. So you have a guy like I always read these names, so I'm not sure if this is always how it's pronounced, but Hosaka. He made a Friendtech, and he's the Wolf, as he's more commonly known. He's one of the biggest personalities on crypto Twitter, and his tweets literally move markets. So it's a difficult playing ground for him to be in, because he has to be really careful about what he tweets, because, say he's not fully allocated to something and he tweets it, it rips without him, or the opposite could happen. It could dump after he tweets it and everybody's pissed. So that puts those types of people in a weird spot. But at the end of the day, they do still have a lot of information, and alpha to give out. So I thought the idea of an exclusive pay-to-play chat room that's not a paid group, but it still makes the guy revenue, was a really cool idea. I think one of
Yep.
the areas that they fucked up in terms of like the economic design is once a key reached a certain price level, say I think Osaka keys were probably 3 ETH or so, uh, price is prohibitive, but what's more prohibitive are the fees that you incur at that point. And so people aren't like actively trading those at 3 ETH, which means, sure, his shares are worth that much, but he's not actually making much of anything off of the volume and the trading fees. So once you hit that cap, it's difficult to incentivize, in this case, Hosaka to keep doing stuff. I think if a team can nail the exclusive kind of paid group style chat room down, I think that'd be really cool. I haven't seen one yet, I don't think.
Totally. I thought there was great stuff in there. It was a lot of fun, like you said. This idea of real access and like putting in work and getting money from trading, or sorry, for having your key trade well, right, and provide, just like it aligned a lot of incentives in a nice way, right?
Yes.
You provide value
exactly.
to your community, and they hold by the token or trade it because they're getting what they need or not out of it, is a really nice way to build this system. And so I think there's something there for sure. I agree with you on that. And that's not just trading. There's a lot of things that it could be, right? It doesn't have to be. And so we didn't see that. We didn't see the exploration of that use case anywhere outside of like basic trade, like basic alpha groups, right? And so I think that will happen though, right? I know there's a bunch of experiments going on here already right now where you're sort of taking that concept, applying it to maybe celebrities or musicians and artists and stuff like that too. And it's a way for the community to bet on you. It's a way for the community to make some money on it, to speculate as well. It's a way for you to get paid by just providing that community. Like, makes total sense, right? So I thought it was super cool, and I do like that idea for sure.
I think to kind of wrap things up, we'll do a review. This is a first for the podcast, but a movie review on a movie that Chris and I both watched over the weekend, which is called Bitconned on Netflix. This has been getting a lot of talk because it's literally right on the homepage of Netflix, which, maybe it's not the best publicity for crypto, but I like anything that gives us some eyes. So this is a movie about a company called Centra, which as matches a lot of, look at this. It's right on the homepage. But as matches a lot of crypto companies in the past, they raised an ICO without having any kind of a product, and then fell into this loop of fraud and deceit and money laundering, etc. And this movie is the story of the three main guys behind it. So the main guy, this guy that we can see on screen right now, his name's Ray. It kind of starts out with him saying when he grew up, he wanted to be a criminal. Like, this is his whole kind of life's goal, to get rich off of primarily illicit means. And he and his buddies, I believe it started like a Lambo rental agency, car rental agency kind of thing in Miami. Just, so they could drive flashy cars and take pictures with them and spend some money and that kind of thing. And then they ran out of money and they're like, well, shit, what are we going to do? And one guy says, hey, this crypto thing's starting to blow up. Let's take a look at this. And the three of them, knowing nothing about crypto, decided that was a good idea. And they came up with the idea to do a crypto debit card, more or less, which basically would allow you, if you had Bitcoin, to spend your Bitcoin like you would a normal credit card. It's a great idea. I think everybody could agree with that. The issue was they didn't actually build any of it, and they raised money on the false pretense of having a partnership with Visa and all this crazy stuff, none of which was true. I thought it was a really entertaining movie. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories like this over the years, and I'm kind of ashamed to say, but they raised something like 15 million from the ICO. I've seen way worse. But I did think this was a really entertaining story. I would highly recommend anybody who's not even maybe interested in crypto, I thought this was a pretty good one. And look, I mean, we've kind of passed the days of scam ICOs, but this is kind of what it's like. I think they showed a stat towards the end of the movie that was um, something like 70% of ICO funds raised in 2017 went to scams, which, you know, I don't know how they qualify that. That could be anything from rug pulls to the token is just dead now because nobody uses it or whatever. But that's a shocking number considering how much money was raised. It was, I mean, I think tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds. So that was shocking. I enjoyed the movie. I won't ruin any of the later plot for anybody planning on watching, but I thought it was pretty entertaining. What about you, Chris?
No, I agree. I mean, I think overall, my honest opinion is I'm a bit tired of the like, here's another crypto scammer story, just because I think we've seen a million of those at this point, and they're all more or less the same flavor of thing. And usually, I find that they're way over dramatized and like over, the sort of like the people actually telling the story, meaning the directors and the folks like that, don't really have any idea what they're talking about. So it's very much like you can tell they're just projecting a worldview through this narrative onto it. I didn't get the sense from this one, to be honest. I thought it was more just to focus on these characters, which in my opinion were hilarious characters. You know, like I thought they were funny, especially this guy, right? Just like such a fucking douchebag, like just looking at this dude, and just hilarious, you know. So I thought he was a good villain for what it's worth, and like just like lived into the character that he was supposed to be, right? Or he believes he to be, right? Which is like, and again, we won't give away too much of it, but I thought it was relative to a lot of the here's another crypto scammer type of thing. It wasn't really that. It's really more of a focus on these guys and their path to get there and their rise and fall. And those, in my opinion, they're always fun stories, and it's told in a pretty compelling way. And the fact that he was so open about it, and they got a lot of good, I think, a lot of good takes from both sides of it, right? So you can really paint a good story. I thought it was overall, at the end of the day, it was an entertaining story, right? I wouldn't call it to me, it's not a crypto story. It's just a criminal story.
Agreed.
With a crypto backdrop, but it was entertaining enough. And I think it's like worth watching, at least just to hear this guy and just to hear him be a jackass, which is, I thought was, enough on its own.
With that thick Staten Island accent too. I will say, I think the name is horrible. Like they could have done a better job on that. But recommend the movie. It was good.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth it. And it is a fun story. So, I always love the sort of like, I grew up watching like crime movies and stuff, and this has that feel to it of like just some like scrappy people coming together to make it work, and it works faster than I ever imagined, and it just all starts to fall apart type of thing, right? And it has a very similar feel, and so it felt like that to me, which I thought was great. And Netflix does a good job of these things typically. So, but yeah, it was good. I would say it's worth watching. Go check it out. And yeah, there's not a lot of crypto media in general, right? Like movie wise or TV wise, and they're usually not very well done. So on a relative basis, I thought this was like a better one, right? Where it's just a more honest look at what's going on, and a compelling character, a funny story, all of that. So I think relatively speaking, I thought it was pretty good. But what would you say, Will, for this against other crypto movies or TV shows?
I'd be lying if I said that I'd seen more than 2 other crypto movies. So I couldn't really tell you on a relative basis, but I will say it got me to watch it. So that's right. Something.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I thought it was interesting. Like you said, like for me, I lived through these scams personally. So like it's more of a tired story than maybe for people who aren't as degenerate as I am. But I thought it was entertaining. It was a good watch.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps it up for us here. It's a bit of a longer one this time around, but thanks for sticking around. As always, feel free to come to Beluga. We're here to help guide you through the crypto markets. And thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.